I found the key in the ignition, and my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't turn it. That's where this story ends, or where it almost did. Let me take you back to where it started, because none of it makes sense unless you know what kind of man my son-in-law was before I figured it out. My name is not important. What matters is that I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years as a high school shop teacher in Dayton, Ohio, and I have one daughter named Audrey who is the best thing that ever happened to me. Her mother, my wife Joanne, passed from ovarian cancer 7 years ago. It's just been Audrey and me since then, and of course, little Cody. Cody is 9. He's got his mother's eyes and his grandmother's laugh, and he calls me Pops, which is the only name that matters to me anymore. About 3 years ago, Audrey married a man named Darren. I want to be fair here because I've spent a lot of time asking myself whether I was just the overprotective father who could never love any man enough for his daughter. I don't think that's it. Joanne always said I was the most level-headed person she'd ever met. My former students would probably say the same thing. I give people the benefit of the doubt. I always have. But something about Darren put me on edge from the start. I couldn't explain it. He was good-looking, well-dressed, had a decent job in medical device sales, said all the right things at dinner, laughed at the right moments, remembered to ask about my knee surgery. On paper, he was fine, better than fine. But Cody never warmed up to him. Kids notice things adults talk themselves out of noticing. I believe that my whole life and working with teenagers for 3 decades only reinforced it. Cody wasn't rude to Darren. He wasn't throwing tantrums or refusing to be in the same room. He just got very quiet whenever Darren was around. He'd drift toward me, stand a little closer, find reasons to hold my hand when he hadn't done that in a couple years. Once, when Audrey was in the kitchen and Darren had gone to the bathroom, Cody leaned against my arm and said very quietly, "Pops, do you think Mama's okay?" I looked down at him. "What do you mean, bud?" He shrugged. The way kids shrug when they don't have words for something they're feeling. "She seems tired." That was all. He didn't say anything else, and I didn't push him. But I thought about that for a long time afterward. Audrey did seem tired. She'd always been bright and talkative, the kind of woman who fills a room without trying. But over the past year, she'd gotten quieter. Slower. I told myself it was the adjustment of marriage, the blending of a family. She was working full-time and raising Cody and building a life with someone new. Of course she was tired. I told myself that for about 6 more months. The thing that finally broke through my own denial was small, laughably small. I had driven over to their house on a Saturday in October to drop off a casserole. I'd started cooking more after Joanne died. Turns out I'm decent at it. And when I knocked on the door, there was a pause that lasted too long before Audrey answered. Her eyes were red. "Mom's recipe," I said, holding up the dish. She smiled. The smile didn't reach anywhere near her eyes. "Thanks, Dad. Come in." Darren was in the living room watching college football. He nodded at me. "Hey, Frank." He always called me Frank, even though my name is Franklin, and even though I'd never told him he could shorten it. Cody was upstairs. Audrey called up to him, and he came down slowly, and when he saw me, he did light up, genuinely, the way he always does. And he hugged me around the waist, and then kind of stayed there, arms around me, for longer than usual. I stayed for about an hour. The whole time, Darren sat in that chair in the living room. He didn't join us at the kitchen table. He just sat there. And every so often, when Audrey laughed at something I said, I caught him looking at her. Not warmly, just watching. On the way home, I tried to put my finger on what I was feeling. The word that came to me was monitored. She felt monitored. I didn't know what to do with that. The next time I saw Cody was 2 weeks later at his soccer game. He played well, got an assist, and afterward he asked if he could ride home with me instead of his mom. Audrey nodded. She said she had a few errands, and Darren had some work calls, so it was just the 2 of us in my truck. We stopped for ice cream. He got mint chip. I got black walnut, which he thinks is disgusting, and I told him so, which made him laugh. We were sitting at one of those little outdoor tables, and he was quiet for a while. And then he said, without looking up from his cone, "Pops," Darren yelled at Mom again last night. I kept my voice steady. "Yeah?" She was crying in the bathroom. She thought I was asleep. I put down my ice cream. "Does this happen a lot, Bud?" He was quiet. Then he nodded. "Has he ever?" I stopped. I had to be careful here. I didn't want to plant anything. "Does he ever do anything other than yell?" Cody thought about it for a moment. "He throws stuff sometimes, like his keys or a glass, but not at her, just near her." He paused. "I think he does it so she knows he could." 9 years old, he said that, so she knows he could. I had to look away for a second. Out at the parking lot, I pressed my back teeth together and breathed. "You did the right thing telling me," I said finally. "I want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong." "I didn't tell Mom, I was telling you." "I know. That's okay." "Is she gonna be okay, Pops?" I looked at my grandson and I made him a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. "I'm going to make sure of it." That night, I barely slept. I lay in the bed Joanne and I had shared for 34 years, and I stared at the ceiling, and I thought about what kind of man throws things near a woman so she knows he could. And I thought about my daughter smiling with her eyes red. And I thought about Cody standing a little too close to me, needing a hand to hold. I'm 64 years old. I taught shop class. I'm not a private investigator. I don't have connections. I have a truck, a pension, a house that's paid off, and a pretty good set of tools in my garage. That's what I had to work with. I started paying closer attention. I had a legitimate reason to be around. Cody's games, Sunday dinners, helping with the yard in the fall. Darren traveled for work about once a month, sometimes more. Those were the times Audrey seemed to breathe. She'd laugh more easily. She'd let Cody stay up late. She'd call me just to talk, the way she used to. One evening when Darren was in Charlotte for 3 days, I was helping Audrey clean out the gutters, and Cody was kicking a ball around the backyard, and I just asked her directly. I said, "Audrey, are you happy?" She was up on the ladder, and she didn't answer right away. Then she climbed down and looked at me and said, "I'm handling it, Dad." "That's not what I asked." Her jaw tightened. "I know what I'm doing." "Okay," I said, "but if you ever need help, any kind of help, you call me. No questions asked. You call me first." She looked at me for a long moment. Something moved behind her eyes. "I know," she said quietly. That was all. But after that, things shifted. About 3 weeks later, I was at the house on a weeknight. Darren was home, so I was just dropping off some things for Cody. And as I was leaving, Cody walked me to my truck. We did the usual goodbye, and as I was getting in, he pressed something into my hand. Just pressed it in and closed my fingers around it without looking at me. I waited until I was at the end of the street to look. It was a folded piece of paper, notebook paper, torn carefully. In Cody's handwriting, the big, earnest print of a 9-year-old who's trying to be neat, it said, "Pops." Mom found something on Darren's laptop. She was really scared. She printed some of it. She put the papers in a Ziploc bag and she taped it under my nightstand. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should give it to you. She made me promise not to say anything, but I'm scared too. Please don't tell her. I told you. I had to pull over. I sat in the truck in the parking lot of a CVS, and I read that note 3 times. My hands were steady, steadier than I expected. I spent 31 years keeping a steady voice in front of 16-year-olds who were scared or angry or in over their heads. You get good at it. But underneath the steadiness, I felt something cold settle into my chest. She found something bad enough that she hid it, something bad enough that she told her 9-year-old son where it was, just in case. I didn't go back to the house that night. I went home, I sat at the kitchen table, and I thought it through. Going in that night made no sense. Darren was home. I needed to be careful. If Darren suspected that Audrey had copied anything or that anyone else knew, things could go sideways fast. I had to think, like this was a game of chess, not checkers. I waited 4 days. On a Thursday afternoon, Darren drove to Indianapolis for a 3-day conference. I knew because Cody had texted me we had a system now, a simple one. He'd text me the little truck emoji whenever Darren's car was gone for a while. I went over Thursday evening. Audrey was surprised to see me. I said I was in the neighborhood and had leftover chili. She laughed and let me in. While she was warming it up, I told her I'd promised Cody I'd come say goodnight to him. Cody was in his room. He looked at me with those big, serious eyes, and I gave him the smallest nod. He reached under the nightstand without me asking. The bag was there. I put it in my jacket pocket. I stayed for dinner. We talked about normal things. His school project, a movie Audrey wanted to see, whether I was going to replace the gutters or just patch them. I stayed long enough that the visit felt ordinary. Then I drove home, made myself a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table under the good light, and opened the bag. There were 6 pages, printed from what looked like email threads, and one document that appeared to be a spreadsheet. My hands were not steady anymore. The emails were between Darren and a woman named Rita. That alone was not a complete surprise. I'd had a feeling in my gut for a while. But the emails went back nearly 2 years. The relationship was serious. He used words to her that he clearly had never used with my daughter. That was bad. But it wasn't the worst part. The spreadsheet was the worst part. It took me a few minutes to understand what I was looking at. Columns with account numbers, dates, amounts, some of the accounts I didn't recognize. One of them I did. Audrey had mentioned once that they had a joint investment account they'd set up after they got married, something they were building for Cody's college fund. Her name was on it. Darren managed it. The numbers on that sheet didn't match anything that should have been in that account if it was being used the way he told her. I'm not a financial expert. I taught woodworking, but I could read a column of numbers and see when they don't add up. And these did not add up. Money was moving into an account that had only Darren's name on it regularly over the course of about 18 months. He was draining their joint account, slowly, systematically, in amounts small enough not to trigger automatic alerts. I sat there for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and I called my brother-in-law, Pete, who was a retired CPA. I know it was almost 11 at night. He picked up on the 3rd ring and I said, "Pete, I need you to look at something. I'm sorry about the hour." Pete didn't even ask questions. He just said, "Come over." I was at his house by 11:30. He looked at the pages for about 15 minutes, asked me 3 or 4 clarifying questions, and then he set the papers down and looked at me over his reading glasses. "This is financial fraud," he said. "Franklin, this is theft from a joint marital account, which makes it marital asset fraud. Depending on the amounts involved, this could be a felony." "How do I handle it?" I asked. "You don't," he said. "An attorney handles it, and you need to get your daughter to one before he figures out she knows." I drove home at midnight. I didn't sleep. I lay there, and I made a plan. Not a reckless one, a careful one. The next morning, I called a family law attorney whose name a colleague had mentioned years ago. The kind of referral you store in the back of your mind and hope you never need. Her name was Patricia, and she had a slot open on Monday. I paid for that consultation myself. I also did one more thing, and this is the part I'm least proud of and most proud of at the same time. I called Darren. I know. Hear me out. I didn't confront him. I didn't accuse him. I called him like a normal father-in-law calling on a Friday afternoon, asking if he wanted to grab lunch on Saturday since Audrey was taking Cody to a birthday party. Man to man, I said. I figured we were overdue. He was wary. I could hear it. But he agreed. Maybe he thought ignoring me would look worse. Maybe he was curious what I knew. We met at a diner near his office, just the two of us. Booths with high backs, the kind of place where nobody pays attention to you. I let him order. I let him talk. I asked about his work, the conference in Indianapolis, whether he was watching the Bengals this season. I was pleasant. I was the mild-mannered retired shop teacher from Dayton, Ohio. About 20 minutes in, I set my coffee cup down and I said very quietly, "Darren, I need you to understand something. My daughter is everything I have left in this world, and Cody is everything after her." He looked at me. Something shifted in his face. "I don't make threats," I said. "I'm not that kind of man. But I want you to understand that I am the kind of man who finishes things. Whatever I start, I see through. I always have." I picked up my coffee again. "Just wanted you to know that about me." He didn't respond. The silence stretched out. "Great diner," I said. "You want to split the check?" I drove home shaking, not from fear, from something else, some adrenaline that had been waiting a long time to move. Monday morning, Audrey sat across from the family law attorney. I sat beside her. I'd called Audrey on Sunday and told her I knew about the papers under the nightstand and that Cody hadn't wanted to keep carrying the secret alone, and that I wasn't angry at her, not even a little, but that it was time. She'd cried for a while. Then she got very quiet. Then she said, "Okay, Dad, okay." The attorney reviewed the documents, confirmed Pete's assessment, and outlined a path forward. She explained that the financial fraud made this not just a divorce case, but potentially a criminal matter, that there were protections available, that Audrey needed to stop moving money in any way that would alert Darren before they were ready to act. We moved carefully. We moved quietly. Over the next 3 weeks, Audrey followed every instruction to the letter. I kept showing up to soccer games and Sunday dinners, pretending everything was ordinary. I have never been a good actor in my life, and those 3 weeks aged me, I think. But I kept it together. Darren's attorney reached out to Audrey's attorney on a Thursday in November. By Friday morning, Darren knew the scope of what was coming. By Friday afternoon, he'd moved out of the house. He didn't fight it the way we'd braced for. Maybe he'd run his own calculations and decided that fighting an attorney who had those printed spreadsheets wasn't a winning hand. Maybe he figured out who had helped Audrey find the attorney. I don't know. I don't particularly care. What I know is that by December, Cody was sleeping through the night again. Audrey called me one evening just to tell me about a movie she'd watched, something she used to do all the time before Darren, just called to tell me about it and laugh. And I sat in the kitchen where Joanne used to sit, and I listened to my daughter laugh, and I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time in a long time. The financial fraud case is ongoing. There are attorneys and accountants and things that move slowly through institutions. I don't understand all of it, but Pete does, and Audrey's attorney does, and the numbers are what they are. Here's what I want to say. If you've been listening to all of this, I'm 64 years old. I have a bad knee and a truck with 140,000 miles on it, and I don't understand half of what's on my phone. People look at a man my age and they see someone whose best days are behind him, someone who should be careful, someone who needs looking after. But I want to tell you, don't count the old ones out. Don't count us out when someone we love is in trouble. I spent 31 years teaching teenagers how to work with their hands, how to measure twice and cut once, how to be patient with a piece of wood that isn't cooperating. I know how to wait. I know how to plan. And I know that the most important projects, the ones that really matter, you don't rush. Cody asked me last week if I was still scared. We were at that same ice cream place. Mint chip for him, black walnut for me. He'd stopped calling it disgusting. Progress. I thought about it for a real moment before I answered. No, I told him, not anymore. He seemed to consider that. Then he leaned against my shoulder the way he used to when he was smaller, and we sat there in the cold November air eating ice cream like it wasn't 43 degrees outside, because that's what you do when things are finally okay. "Pops," he said. "Yeah, bud." I think you're pretty smart for an old guy." I laughed. First real laugh in months, maybe. "Don't tell anyone," I said. "I've got a reputation to protect." He grinned at me, and for a second he looked so much like his mother, so much like Joanne, that it hit me in the chest like it always does. But it was a good ache, the kind that reminds you what you're doing all of this for. I finished my ice cream. The sun was going down over the strip mall across the street. Somewhere behind us, a car radio was playing something I half recognized. And I thought about all the ways things could have gone differently, all the moments I could have talked myself out of listening, out of trusting what I felt, out of believing that a 9-year-old boy who stands a little too close knows something worth paying attention to. And I thought about Joanne the way I always do, how she always said I was the most level-headed person she'd ever met. I think she'd be proud of me. I really do. I keep thinking about that CVS parking lot, sitting in my truck under the fluorescent lights, reading a 9-year-old's handwriting and feeling the world reorganize itself around me. People talk about karma like it's something mystical, like the universe is keeping score in some ledger nobody can see. I don't know if I believe in that. What I believe in is simpler and, I think, more honest. The choices a person makes every single day build the life they end up living. Darren made choices one after another for nearly 2 years. Small ones at first, probably. Manageable lies, justifiable transfers, and then bigger ones because the small ones had held. That's how it works. Not punishment from above. Just the natural weight of a life built on something hollow. Eventually it collapses under its own load. And Audrey, she's the one who took the hardest fall in all of this, and she's the one I want to talk about for a moment, because what she did, quietly printing those pages, sealing them in a bag, hiding them under her son's nightstand with instructions, that wasn't weakness. That was a woman who hadn't lost her moral footing even when everything else had been taken from her. She knew what was right. She protected the evidence. She protected Cody the best way she knew how. I think about what that must have cost her, keeping all of it inside, going through the motions of an ordinary day while carrying that. And I have nothing but respect for her. That's what doing the right thing looks like when there's nobody watching. That's what it actually costs. Cody taught me something too, and I'm not embarrassed to say that a 9-year-old outpaced me in certain ways. He didn't have the words for what he was feeling, but he trusted them anyway. He noticed that his mother was crying in the bathroom. He noticed what it meant when someone throws things near a person instead of at them. He carried a secret that was too heavy for him, and then, when he couldn't carry it anymore, he put it in the right hands. That's not a small thing. That's a child who understood, instinctively, that some problems need more than one person. I'm 64 years old, and I still had to learn that. My instinct was to handle it quietly, alone, the way I'd always handled hard things, the way men of my generation were taught to handle hard things. But what actually worked was the opposite. Pete with his reading glasses and his CPA brain, the attorney with her clear-eyed assessment of what those spreadsheets meant. Audrey trusting me enough to sit across that desk. None of it happens without the other. You can be patient, you can plan, you can hold your nerve through the whole thing, but you need people. That's not weakness either. That's just how things actually get done. When I sat down at my kitchen table that Thursday night with Pete's voice still in my head, "This is financial fraud, Franklin. This is theft." I had a choice to make. I could panic. I could storm over to their house and say things I couldn't take back. Or I could think. I could be methodical. I could remember that the most important projects, the ones that really matter, you don't rush. I'm glad I remembered that. Cody leaned against my shoulder the other day and told me I was pretty smart for an old guy. I think what he meant was that I showed up. I paid attention. I didn't talk myself out of what I was seeing just because it was uncomfortable to see. That's all any of us can do, really. Show up. Pay attention. Don't look away when someone you love is trying to tell you something, even when they don't quite have the words for it yet.